This is kind of out of my expertise to be talking on this subject. I'm a bug guy, but I like playing with plants, and I've had the opportunity to have a fairly large plot at CSU facility south of here. Try things over the last couple of years, some with another colleague of mine and some by myself. And some of those I just want to talk about, some of the fun plants that I've had experience with. I think one of the first things that I want to talk about is a plant that goes by various names. Toothache plant's probably the most common way you're going to find it, but buzz buttons or electric daisy, paracress, these are all names given to a plant that has very unusual properties in terms of taste and flavor and what it does to you. So it's somewhat medicinal, but also used a lot in cooking. The plant is Ecmella oleracea. It sometimes used to be called spilanthes. I guess maybe if I put that back here, I have Ecmella spilanthes oleracea. That's the new genus name is Ecmella. Sometimes you'll find this under spilanthes still, though. It has two different flower forms. The typical wild form, I think, is a yellow. These are low-growing plants that spread. And then the other one that's kind of a bullseye flower form, you'll also find. Both of these have properties that are used in cooking, but obviously these have got different forms if you're going to use these as an ornamental, because I think these could make a good bedding plant. I first ran into them when I was in Madagascar a few years ago, and I saw this plant in the markets, and also it was part of the main national dish of Madagascar, which is called roma sava, which is essentially some kind of meat as well as lots of greens, ginger, onions, and just delicious. But what really makes it stand out is this toothache plant, or paracress, or in Madagascar it's on mahalo is what they'll call it. Because what it does is it makes you salivate, your tongue tingles, there's maybe a little numbness, but it just makes everything taste more luscious. And this is, I think, very useful in a lot of kinds of cooking, but stews is what I use it mostly in. It's sometimes put in salads. It's also being used now flavored drinks. I think it's a hot item in some of the Denver bars. People will put some of this little buzz button around their glass and then drink it, and their mouth kind of gets zingy. And there's a company that sells a drink that's based on this product. But toothache plant is it's likely a native to South America. Nobody really knows for sure because it has been spread all over the world a long time ago. It's easily grown as an annual. It is not frost tolerant, but easily grown as an annual. The leaves and flower buds contain these compounds that kind of give it a little zest. I mean, you have to try it in order to understand why I'm talking about it. But it's a really unique sensation that is, I think, quite pleasant, and certainly combined with some kinds of foods will make it have take it to a different level. I also think that these plants have ornamental value. I'm particularly interested in plants that, yes, have ornamental value, but also have value perhaps to promote pollinators, or have value because you eat them. So anyway, this is one that I've been growing ever since I came back from there. It does really well. And I have lots of seed of that if you want to take some with you to try it. It germinates pretty quickly as long as the temperatures are warm. Another one that I just started growing is chia. So a lot of the things I'm going to show, at least next, are from southern Mexico. So since I quit the day job at CSU, I have an opportunity now to travel some. And for the last 3 years, I've gone to Oaxaca, Mexico, to spend a month with my wife to try to learn Spanish, which is working okay. I'm trying to learn a language when you're over 70 years old, it's a little tough. Anyway, but that part of the world is an amazing source of biodiversity, including a huge number of plants that we grow that are our main crops in the world. Starting with corn, the original corn, teosinte, came out of that part of the world. It's now the #1 food crop. Anyway, but another one that I became a little more interested in just recently is chia. And chia is a plant that is in the genus Salvia, and maybe many of you recognize that as a genus of plants that we might have examples in our flower garden. And this is one that does produce interesting flowers that are heavily visited by all sorts of insects as a food source. So chia has mostly been grown historically for the seed, and in southern Mexico it has long been produced. And when the Spanish came, they took records of what was the foods that were being eaten. Chia was probably the third most common food crop that the Aztecs would consume after beans and corn. So it was a major dietary item. It is still used to date. It has lots of different kinds of uses. By the way, chia could probably be associated with several other plants that are there. Salvia hispanica is the species that I'm talking about, but there are at least 3 other plants that grow in Oaxaca that you can get this seed from that are related to it. However, the one that I'm pushing now, the Salvia hispanica, is one that we have varieties that reliably flower the first year. So 2 different chias in this picture. The one on the left is the one I'm going to push. It's a US adapted chia variety, and the one on the right is one that I've never gotten to flower. It's one of the other species. It was sold as chia in the garden catalog, but just doesn't produce. But this new one does. The reason we have a good chia that can now work in the US is there was a breeding program done in the University of Kentucky to develop a US adapted chia. Because Heartland chia is kind of the general name given to it, and one of the people who grow it sell it under that name. So I just bought some of this product this year to try it out for the first time, and I was very impressed. It produced flowers that are very similar to many of the ornamental salvia, others that we already grow, but this produces chia seed too. So that's another plus. So both good for pollinators and good for ornamental purposes, and you get chia seed. Chia seed is highly nutritious. We don't use it a lot in the US, but it's high in protein. It's got some very healthful fat in it, a lot of fiber. It's also, maybe if any of you have ever used chia, it's highly hygroscopic, meaning it absorbs water really, really readily. It can absorb 12 times its weight in water. It becomes kind of slimy and mucilaginous, and anyway, it's used often in drinks and the like. Has high value, and also one other use that is historical is chia pets. So that's actually probably what people mostly think of chia in the US, but been reading about chia pets the last couple of days, and they've only been around since 1977, but you can find chia pets in almost any form. I mean, here we've got Willie Nelson and Pee Wee Herman, but you can have Godzilla, you can have porcupine, anyway. So they are easy to grow, and you can actually eat the greens if you want, but they're also just fun. So anyway, but they're not just for chia pets. This is a legitimate food crop that, again, historically has had big value in at least southern Mexico. Another Mexican herb that I'd find would be often served would be epazote, or Mexican tea. And this is an herb, it's got, it's hard to describe the flavor, but I find it very pleasant. It is used often fresh in quesadillas. It might be just put on top. It's a very common way I would see it served, to just give it a little more flavor. Or it's also very commonly used in beans. Cooking beans, particularly black beans, and that's because epazote does have a property that is anti-flatulent, so it can reduce farting from eating beans. So this is another reason why it's used. So I'm sure that there's a bunch of it in the beans you're all eating right now. No, anyway, but it can grow. It can easily grow. The seeds are really small, so you have to be careful and you don't plant them too deeply or anything. But I find it fairly readily reseeds. I've had it reseed in my garden in the past if I don't disturb the surface, and then it just drops and regrows. Fresh leaves are the primary crop. I mean, if I'm growing it, I get a lot of fresh new leaves, and then it starts to go to seed. Ideally, you want to have this as just the greens is what you want, not the seeds. You want to harvest it before then. So I would suggest multiple plantings, and you can save the seed afterwards. And again, used to flavor myriad dishes if you want to try something different. But a very common food used throughout Mexico, not just southern Mexico. Another pretty obscure one, so you'd only find this in southern Mexico and into Guatemala, is chapiche or papiche. It's an aster family plant, grows in a plant maybe a couple, 3 feet. You don't see it a whole lot. It is something that is used fresh to just brighten up all sorts of dishes. It does not store well, so if you ever want to have the flavor of this, you have to grow it. You're not going to ever find it in the stores around here. It is sold in markets down in Mexico, southern Mexico anyway, but again, it's always sold fresh. So it's added a lot to things like enchiladas, and tortillas and tacos and the like. Also in soups. So primarily grown, used in southern Mexico. The flavor, I don't know, you have to try it. It's a little zingy, some people call it a little robust, a little grassy, or anyway, there's all sorts of ways to describe. I'd see it in the market and say, and if I see something in the market, I'd say, I want to try that. I want to see if I can grow it in Fort Collins, and I can. It's grown very well the last 2 years that I've tried this. I don't have seed for that with me, but if you want to contact me, I could get you some. So saved from last year. And then the plant I've been growing for a long time are globe artichokes. I'm not sure the first year I did it, but it was at least 30 years ago, probably more. I grew them because I saw an article in Sunset magazine that said you can't grow them here. That's a challenge. So ever since that time, I've been growing globe artichokes without any break, I don't think. Maybe 1 year one year I didn't grow them, but since then I grow them. Globe artichokes are, a kind of odd vegetable. They're a giant thistle bud. I mean, who would eat thistle buds? But that's what they are. Native to the area of mostly the Mediterranean, where it's used as a crop the most in the world in that area, but it's been grown in the U.S. for quite a long time. The main production area, almost all globe artichokes are grown in California, in the Salinas Valley. Watsonville is globe artichoke capital of the world. It grows as a perennial, and it can be a big plant. I mean, it can get several feet tall and will come back year after year, and then you get the buds, and that's what's harvested. All the buds we get from there are the big buds, but they produce lots of buds, and lots of them are a lot smaller than what we're going to see in the supermarkets. This is a plant that I grow as an annual. It does not survive winters here because if the soil temperatures get to about 20 degrees, they will die. I've heard of people who have overwintered them, but it's a lot of work. I just say, just plant them every year. Get some seeds. I usually pre-sprout them on paper towels. I then transplant them into a pot that is fairly deep because it's going to put a nice taproot down that you want. You don't want it in a little shallow container. Something will go down deep, and then I started off and around this time of year. It needs some exposure to nighttime temperatures under 50 degrees, but that's not a problem. In fact, I think last year I put them out too early, and they got too much of the chill that they needed, and many of them didn't produce flowers before they got very big. So I'm going to keep them a little warmer, give them their 50-degree chill maybe in April. Generally plant them in the middle of May. Often after you put them in the ground, they kind of just sit there and that they don't look happy for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then once they take, then they come back. I've always planted them and just because that's the field that I work in, that's the way it works, at 30-inch spacing between rows and in a row, 2.5 feet apart. Full sun. And that's a productive looking plant there on the right. Not all of them do I get that many buds from. There are several varieties that are out there. Imperial Star and Taver are ones that are designed to be grown as an annual. And Green Globe is old variety, Green Globe improved. This one is a little more irregular in terms of whether it may produce buds at all. Sometimes it doesn't produce buds. But this is the least expensive, and almost always they produce very nice a little bit later than the other ones, which is fine with me. We start getting them in end of July, early August, and I can harvest until it gets too cold and they pretty much stop growing. Artichokes are best picked as the buds fully emerge. So as soon as they come up, that's when you pick them. So if you look at the picture on the left, that has a big bud and has a little bud. That little bud is not going to get any bigger if you wait. It's just going to become more mature. Once it sits on the plant, then it will start to open. You start seeing the base of the plant open at the base like that. That means it is the heart of the artichoke, which if you've ever eaten a artichoke, it's the meat part in the middle. That is already being turned into choke, the stringy stuff that's going to be the flower. So you don't wait. You pick this at least twice a week. And I see over mature ones constantly being sold. No, you get them when they're little, and then new ones will come up. And the little ones are delicious. I mean, we don't see them sold here. The little ones are delicious. And that's actually what I eat the most of. The flowers are great. The flowers are really pretty. If you want to let them go, you'll probably won't get flowers until very late in the year. The ones you do get are pretty spectacular. But if you want better flowers, next plant, cardoon. But they store well as a dried flower. Once my wife made a really nice Christmas wreath out of flowers of artichoke, because I happened to have a whole lot that year. Cardoon is a plant that probably you haven't heard of. It is in the same species as globe artichoke. It is more of a wild type plant, again, native to the Mediterranean. It looks like a giant thistle. And it looks like a bull thistle or something. The part of the plant you eat with cardoons is not the bud, it's the base of the plant. So you will find it in markets kind of looking like celery. And these, ideally in Europe where this is used a lot, often there's some killing underneath the base of the plant to blanch it a little bit. And then you have to, peel it a little bit. It's got some little spines and get all that off. But you braise it, you put it in stews, baked dishes. It's got artichoke flavor, but it's the stem. And the flowers are spectacular. The base of the flower is round and really spiky. I mean, I think of those old weapons, a mace, with the ball that had the spikes on it, and what it kind of looks like. And then out comes these beautiful purple flowers. And this one, in my yard, I can get cardoons to overwinter. Now, I have it next to the house in kind of a sheltered area, but it comes up year after year. And it can be a big plant. And they start flowering usually the week after the county fair, so I can't enter them. But that's in early August. Okay, so some other things that I've really liked trying are pumpkins that you grow for their seed. I mean, I'd always liked pumpkin seeds. When I was carving my jack-o'-lantern, I always keep the seeds, and I love the pumpkin seeds. They had the hulls and everything, but butter and salt, everything tastes good. Then there are ones that are naked. They don't have a hull, or they have a really fine hull. And these are what we might see as pumpkin seeds for sale, for salads and lots of things. They don't have the all the fiber of the hull, which is okay. But anyway, there are certain pumpkins that have been bred to have naked seeded. And so the ones that I can find, looking around this year, the oldest one that I think was in the market was Lady Godiva, and then Kakai and HSC 151, and these are all in one group, open pollinated, got kind of a striped kind of fruit, and dark seeds that dry well and are delicious. They don't roast well. And then Naked Bear and Pipita are the other two. So these are the ones that are in that first group with the dark seeds that dry down, very flavorful. We use them in salads, use them for pumpkin seeds. And pumpkin seeds are now a hip thing to be eating, particularly older gentlemen for certain illnesses we have. So look up pumpkin seeds, they'll cure everything. So. Anyway, these are the three varieties. They are all open pollinated. So I happen to have a lot of seed for Kakai, which I think these could be, if you want a jack-o'-lantern, you got a jack-o'-lantern. But then you've got seeds that are naked and easy to eat as a dried seed. So, yep. So anyway, so those go two different uses. The two that are hybrids are Naked Bear, which is the one I've been growing for several years, and one I just found this year that is called Pipita. and that's out of the University of New Hampshire. So I just ordered some pie pita a couple days ago, and I'll use that. But Naked Bear, I love Naked Bear. It is a small pumpkin, 3 pounds at most, and it is packed with seeds. And the flesh is a good tasting pumpkin flesh. If you want, a pie pumpkin to roast, it works great for that. But it is packed. You will get far more seeds on a limited area. It's also a restricted vine. It's not a very big plant, so you can put them together and closer together. I love Naked Bear, so I give a thumbs up to hybrid. Again, I've said all this, highest yield of seeds. And the best ones for roasting. So I put them in the oven, 200, 225 degrees, a little bit of olive oil and salt, and they puff up a little bit, kind of like popcorn, but they are to die for. They are by far the best roasted pumpkin seeds. A lot of the others don't roast well. They're dry well, they have good flavor. I don't know about pie pita. I do have some Naked Bear, not very many, and some cacao seed. And then this is a squash. I love the squash. When I give it to people, I work at kind of a food banky thing in Fort Collins called Vindicate. And when I bring in the North Georgia candy roasters, people love it. I mean, they've seen tons of squash all summer long, but nothing like this. I mean, these are like torpedoes. And these are, that come in, and it is an heirloom squash. It has been around over 200 years. The Cherokee developed it. Has excellent flavor. We did a taste testing of different squashes and pumpkins in terms of which ones we'd most like to make pumpkin pie out of, and this is clearly at the top. It also stores well, and I'm not sure about this, but it said it improves flavor over time with some storage as well. Just huge. It has a vine that goes all over the place, though. For the littlest thing, so here we had ones that are this big. Now we're talking about something that's this big. Cucamelons, or Mexican sour cucumbers, or gherkins, or mouse melons. They are a kind of cucumber that looks like a little baby watermelon. I mean, if you had a Barbie doll, this would be her watermelon. So perfect size for it. It grows on a vine. Last year was the first I'd really tried it, and I grew it straight on the ground, so it was just growing on the ground. But this is something that produces a nice vine that can climb, and that's how I'll grow it this year. It grows up as a vine, and you get these little fruit. They're just really cute, and you don't leave on too long because they lose flavor. They get a little more sour. I don't know. I've used them in salads. You slice them, and they add, and I like them. This is the only one that I've seen actual websites where people talk about hating a vegetable fruit. So this was a blog, I hate cucamelons. The next week he put out a survey, and actually almost 2/3 of the respondents said they don't like them too. Now peppers are going to be hard to grow because we got short growing season. Habaneros in particular have a long growing season. The habaneros that I like to work with are ones that are non-hot. They are habaneros, but they have had the capsaicin levels reduced, so they have very little heat. There's a couple new varieties that are just out. The one that I have used that's been around for a while, that was an award-winning vegetable the year it came out, is roulette. And several places sell it, usually get them from Johnny's. Highly productive. Get a vine like this, and I might have 80 fruit on it. I get a good long growing season like I did last year. These are non-hot. The way I think they work great is you cut them in half, you take the stem off, cut it in half, take seeds and the middle part out, put them on a cookie sheet with olive oil and salt, and then roast them until they get done. Not charred, but done. They're habanero crisps, I call them. They're the next big bar food, I think. But anyway, this has been around for a while. Roulette is impressive yields, and I didn't even think about it until somebody who I gave one to a year ago told me it overwinters in her greenhouse. And I said, duh, of course they do. I didn't even think about it. But peppers are not annuals in warm climates. They may last 3, 4, 5 years. And so if you had a protected area, you could grow pretty much all of these through the winter. Essentially zero heat and good flavor. I mean, habaneros, most people don't know the taste of habaneros because of all the heat gets in the way, but they have different flavors. So again, I have the peppers and roast them. Roulette is a hybrid. These three are all open pollinated. So the one that's been around for years is habanada, and I have grown that. It doesn't yield nearly as much as the roulette does, and the peppers are a little smaller, but you know, it's open pollinated and you can keep the seed. And then the two that showed up this last year from Oregon, Nada Hada and Mild Thing. I mean, they're having some fun with the name. Large, sweet peppers to roast. Okay. The one that I really like is something called Sweet Delilah. It's called an Italian, Marconi type, whatever. Thick fleshed. And the reason I learned about this, I'll show you a picture of him. Mike Bartolo worked at the experiment station in Rocky Ford and is a pepper breeder. He would have trials every year, and this was the best pepper. He did sweet peppers, he did tons of chilies. For a sweet pepper, this stands out. Unfortunately, it's a hybrid. So Sweet Delilah is the hybrid, great for roasting. If I want roasted red peppers, I mean, this is what I'll use. Very productive for that. And the plants, I mean, they're just loaded with heavy fruit. There's Mike Bertolo, the breeder who has many, even though he's retired, he's still developing some plants that he is trying to get out to the growers in down south, but pretty much anywhere. And the one he has that is sort of like Sweet Delilah, it's got a little bit of heat, but not much, but also very heavy, thick fruit, is called Colorado 538. And this is an open pollinated variety. Again, you want to start peppers early, particularly in Wyoming. Sweet Delilah is the large red pepper that I particularly like, and again, it's a hybrid, but the other one is not. Colorado 538. Oh, and then one plant that I've been very disappointed in are kaleettes. And maybe somebody else has had better luck. But this is a cross between Brussels sprouts, which is on the right of this picture, and kale on the left. You cross them and you're supposed to get little tiny kale things coming out where the buds of a Brussels sprouts would be. 2 years running on this. I can get a big plant. The plant gets big. Never do they yield. I mean, they're just, it's supposed to be, it says 105 days maturity. After 150 days, all I have is these little nubbins. And anyway, and I'm not a big kale person in the first place, so what's the point? It's the only one that I don't like. It's very, very long time to mature, and it gets cabbage aphid, and that's a really tough insect to control. I mean, not quite as bad as on Brussels sprouts. Anyway, so that's it. Want to talk to me if you're ever in Fort Collins during the farmers market for the first month. I'll be there with my booth, Old Guys That Like to Grow Plants, where we try to sell plants that nobody else is selling. That's our niche. I think we'll be doing it this year, and I think it starts May 17th, if I remember. Yeah, both of you, the two of you. Yep. Okay.